Welcome to She Illuminated. I'm Jana Fuchs, a licensed clinical psychotherapist and soul coach for burnt out women and moms looking to take control of their stress and say hello to a more joyful life. I'm also a mom to two incredible young humans, one of whom is autistic. Together, we will dive into real, raw, and messy conversations about intuition, vulnerability, and the resilience of the human spirit. We all deserve the gift of connection to ourselves and to our lives. So let's spend a little time together here, and perhaps we can walk through the rest of this day feeling just a bit more brightly illuminated. Let's go. Dear illuminated spiritual warriors out there, you are in for a treat today. Let me tell you, you'll also need to grab your box of tissues for this episode because it's going to be hard not to cry. And trigger warning, the loss of a child is acknowledged in this episode. So if this isn't the right time or place for you to listen, please press pause and come back when you're ready. Also, please note that explicit language is occasionally used. So if your little ones are around or listening, please consider taking that into account. Now, let me also tell you that much of what you're about to hear today is so beautiful, inspiring, and uplifting. It's the story of how one mother turned her soul-crushing pain into spiritual meaning-making and abundance by healing herself and helping others to heal their soul wounds. This very special guest is none other than the fabulous Nadia Ahrens. Nadia is a psychotherapist, spiritual life coach, and hypnotherapist. She has been helping empaths navigate traumas, challenges, and transitions for over 20 years, guiding them on a spiritual journey and helping them discover their soul's purpose. Using a blend of clinical expertise with healing modalities such as hypnotherapy, soul work, and the chakra system, she helps empaths turn their wounds into wisdom so they can live empowered, authentic lives. This isn't going to be a long intro because I'm just so excited to dive in today and have you all take a listen to the goodness that is Nadia. Nadia is a gorgeous, bright light of a human, healer, and mama, and I know that you will all feel as instantly connected to her as I did when I first met her. So enjoy the episode. Hi, Nadia.
Hi, Jana.
I am so excited you're here because one of the reasons that I was immediately drawn to you and drawn to your work is because you have such this accessible and cool way of blending evidence-based traditional approaches, like AKA like the shit that we know works as psychotherapists, that's, you know, like backed by years of research, with the more spiritual, artsy, mystical-y side of things. And, you know, many people listening to this now hopefully value and understand what therapy is all about, but maybe not as many people are as familiar with hypnotherapy.
I call it hypno healing when I'm doing
Hypno healing. Okay.
Yeah, but those are just basically modified hypnotherapy sessions.
And you also talk about soul work and the chakra system. And so can you enlighten all of us as to like what these things are, like hypnotherapy, hypno healing, the chakra system, soul work? What is all of that?
Where do I even begin? Okay, so I'll start with an overview because, you know, people have heard about hypnosis. Some people have gone to, like, you know, in college or whatever, they've gone and gotten hypnotized. But I always like to say, like, hypnotherapy is different. Like, I'm not going to make you cluck like a duck or chicken, whatever animals cluck. But what hypnosis is, it's really just a fancy word for being in a relaxed state. And when we're in a relaxed state, we access a different part of our mind. And as a fellow therapist, you'll know that we have different parts of our mind. We have our conscious mind, we have our subconscious mind, and then we have our unconscious mind. But we're in our conscious mind, which is basically like me and you talking, or any sort of linear, analytical, rational thinking, your personality. That's all in your conscious mind. And we're only in our conscious mind 10% of the day. The other 90% of the time, we're in our subconscious mind. And so with hypnosis and hypnotherapy, we're shifting from our conscious mind to our subconscious mind. And our subconscious holds our feelings, our dreams, our creativity, our spiritual connection, all of our body functioning, like our blood flowing and our heart beating and, moving our arms around and walking. All of that is not done in your conscious, rational thinking mind. It is all done in your subconscious. And so when we do healing work in our subconscious, our mind, our analytical mind, our ego defense mind that's really created for survival is softened so that we can get to the root of whatever your wound is so that we could heal it. And so when we're working in that subconscious, you're relaxed, you get to the root of the problem a lot quicker and more efficiently. And there's a whole spiritual creative component that goes along with it so that you understand essentially not only why you have certain behaviors and patterns and beliefs, but how that's connected to your soul's journey. And so my belief is that we all, before we come down into our human selves as Jana, as Nadia, as any one of your listeners, our soul chooses, okay, I'm going to choose my parents, my friends, my relationships, my experiences, so that I could learn specific things and my soul could grow and evolve. Yeah. And then we come down into our little, baby human selves, and a veil comes down. So you don't remember any of the stuff that you signed up for, because I mean, quite honestly, I don't know about you, but if I knew everything that was in store for me, I would be like rocking in a corner and like being like, no, ain't gonna do it.
Right. And as you were talking, I was just thinking about, I was fortunate to have like really awesome, unconditionally supportive and loving parents. But we all have friends and clients and people in our lives who are not as fortunate. And I can imagine right now, if they're listening, right, that there's probably real resistance to going like, yeah, fuck you. Like, I call bullshit. No way did I choose my parents, right? That's just like, no, that's all wrong. So like, what do you say to that?
Well, I mean, those types of people don't come to me, quite honestly.
There you go. They weed themselves out.
Well, yeah, quite honestly, they do.
Yeah.
And that statement is going to bring up a lot of resistance. And why? Because, and again, people might be like, who is this chick? Like, I don't ever want to listen to her again. Or they're going to be like, oh my God, I totally get her. She's super rad, right? There's like no real in between with me. But when you start to heal yourself and you go on this psychological, emotional, spiritual journey and you go, oh shit, like I signed up for my dad. I signed up for my brother. It gives you ultimate responsibility for yourself. You can't sit in the drama triangle and be a victim of your life or a martyr or a persecutor. It's going, okay, this is basically the cards that I was dealt. What is it that I have to learn from these experiences?
Yeah.
Not even as a soul to grow, but just as a human to grow. What did I learn from that really fucked up relationship that I had?
Yeah.
What did I learn from, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, from my son dying? There's as hard as the experiences are, and I've gone through the hardest experience that I think anybody will possibly go through in life. There is always a lesson to learn and grow and evolve from. I could have easily just said, okay, in 2016, I'm out. Peace out. I get the victim card that I get to play for the rest of my life. But I chose not to. And everybody, no matter what their circumstances are, abuse, death, trauma, whatever it is, we always have a choice about whether or not we want to be a victim or if we want to transform.
Yeah. Thank you so much for elaborating on that more vulnerable story that you just shared about your son, and also for clarifying for us like the differences between the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and how the work that you do really strives to open up a gateway and help people to connect much more deeply and authentically to their core self, to their highest, wisest self. And like for you, I'm wondering if you could say a little more about your son, about Jack, and like that, if you could even just like zoom in for a moment, if you're comfortable, around like the moment or the moments when you were like realizing that you were being faced with a decision about like the fork in the road between that victim mentality that you just spoke about or choosing something different for yourself, and like how you did that.
Well, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Like 7 years out, I could talk about it, and maybe not shed a tear. But Jack was 8.5, and he was amazing. He was bright and shiny and extremely intelligent and super emotionally intelligent, even at 8.5, and just a really deep, wise soul. And he had a seizure related accident because he had benign childhood epilepsy, and I put that in air quotes. And my life just, shattered, quite honestly. And I would be up in his room for hours, and I would just be on the floor crying in a ball, and just, not eating. I would like, for anybody who has lost a child, like people want to bring you a whole bunch of food, like, and I was like, oh my God, my house is overflowing with food and I can't even eat anything. Like, it was just, it was shattering. And I remember being on the floor of his bedroom. And I always say, like, whether it's, people have these on the floor moments, right? Whether it's your bathroom, your kitchen, your bedroom, there are these dark nights of the soul where you're just like, I don't want to do this. And so I was laying, just, I can't even say crying, because it was just this like primal crying. Doesn't even give it justice. Like, it's hard to explain in words how it felt, that's why I always say it was like shattering. But in that moment, I was like, you know what, maybe I'll just live a passively suicidal life waiting to die, because I can't do this, and he was my firstborn, he was my baby, like, and we had this soul connection that was like beyond anything. And I just was like, I can't do this. And at the time, I have twin daughters. They were like, I don't know, a couple of months shy of 7. and so I just remember, and people would ask, like, how are they doing? And I was just like, I don't know. I have no idea how they're doing. I mean, and of course the therapist like get them into all the things, but like I had no clue. I was like a zombie. And so I was laying on the floor and going, okay, maybe I'll just live this passively suicidal life waiting to die, because every day that I'm here, I'm one day closer to Jack. Like that was literally what I was thinking and feeling. And in that moment, and there was like this resolution, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to live this zombie life until I die. And in the next second, my grandmother popped into my head. And at the time of Jack's death, she was 98. And I just said, fuck, I'm going to be here a really long time because I've got a lot of her genes. And in that moment, I went, if I live this victimized life, this is going to be even more of a jail sentence than I'm already in. And in that moment, I was like, I have to get up off the floor and transform the shit out of the worst experience I will ever experience in my life. And in that moment, it was like, okay. And it was like, I'm gonna get up, but it wasn't like, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna transform my life. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get up and maybe get out of my pajamas today. Or, eat a meal.
Right. Which probably both of those things probably felt like huge steps compared to all you could do was just lay on the floor.
Right. Right. And it was, people are always like, oh, one day at a time, one step at a time. And it's like, this was one breath at a time. Yeah. This was okay, and eventually, like I shut down my practice. I was like, there's no way I could, everything shut down, and eventually as time went on, as I was in grief counseling, as I was, I'm in a spiritual mystery school, which is like beyond nourishing and soul filling. And, it's like, I had these touch points where I was like, okay, as hard as this is, I could, take a couple of steps forward, or I could breathe today, or what, and then over time, I kind of just created my system. Like, okay, I'm going to go into his room. I'm going to cry. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to journal. And I kind of just used his room then as this sanctuary for healing, so that I can't, because before I was just like hemorrhaging all over the place, that I was like, if I could contain this and be in his room for 3 hours and do the work that I need to do for myself, so that I can maybe take my daughters to school or cook a meal or have some sort of semblance in my life, like these were the steps I had to take.
I think any mother who is listening, any parent who's listening, it's very difficult to sit here with a dry eye. And I think it's every parent's absolute worst nightmare. And the description that you kind of paint is palpable. And I imagine if I were in, God forbid, such a situation, I don't think I'd be able to move off the floor either for a really long time. Yeah. I love the way that you talk about what you did in Jack's room. Because in some of your work, you talk about, like this image of a cave and like the divine feminine, and during certain periods or seasons of life, how important it is for us to retreat into that cave once in a while, so that we can restore ourselves and rest. And, regenerate. But also, like, even though Jack's room was like this kind of like safe haven for you to do this work in, there was also for me this feeling of like expansiveness that came with your journaling and your meditating and you're just being in that closed space. So that's an interesting kind of like juxtaposition, like the closed space that brought you safety and expansiveness.
Yeah. And it's, it's one of those things because it's like, I think as humans and certainly as women, we want to avoid that cave. We are conditioned to keep going, to power through, to, sleep when I'm dead or whatever the saying.
America, baby.
Right. And it's like, and what's happening? It's like, it's doing us such a disservice, and look, I've always been good with boundaries. I've always been good with self-care just because one, I had to learn it. Right. But but this was like, there's no way. And I always grew up spiritual. I always had a relationship with like the other side, with all things mystical. Stuff comes to me in dreams. Like my mom's side of the family is Ukrainian, and for Ukrainian Christmas, we would go to my great aunt's house, and then after dinner, instead of playing games or cards, we would make a Ouija board, like out of paper and a marker and a saucer and a candle. And that's what we would do. And it wasn't actually until high school where I was like, wait, there's an actual game that you could buy. Like
that was my entire like middle school like existence was
right.
Parties
with this boy like me.
Yeah.
Same, until I had a really bad experience with it in high school, and I was like, done.
Oh shit! Never again. That could be a whole other episode.
Oh yeah, for sure. But but the spiritual piece is I wanted to get to that because when I was meditating, when I was journaling, it was also a way that I could connect with Jack. And I knew that part of my healing is going, how can I continue my relationship with Jack even though he's not physically here? Right. And for people, it's just, to really just break it down into like science, like energy doesn't go away. No, it's either physical or solid, liquid, or gas. Right. We're solid and liquid and we're gas too. But like when you leave your human body, you're still energy.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning how to continue that relationship.
100%. And very, very different. And I know you know this, but I lost my mom when I was 20. She was diagnosed with endometrial cancer when I was 17. And I'll get into this on another episode. But when I lay with my kids at bedtime each night and put them to bed, I feel her laying with us. And it's almost physical. She's so close. I can almost feel her physically.
Yeah.
And right, I am now 44, right? That was 24 years ago. I've now been without her more of my life than I was with her. And that's such a line. That's so
yeah.
Totally.
I'm inching up on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious to ask, have your ideas on death and your connection with like that relationship that you were just talking about, right? Just like in a different form. It's no longer like in a physical form, but it's still a relationship and it's still very strong. It's just different. Have your thoughts around death and what happens after death changed since the loss of Jack?
I'm going to say no for me because I've always believed in life after death. Like I'm a double Scorpio. Like we are all about death and rebirth, like just in general. So like even when I was younger, whenever somebody died in my family, they were showing up in my dreams.
Yeah.
And, and I was like, oh, like, some were really great. Like when my aunt died, she was hilarious. But I was like, what are you doing here? And then she was like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to be here. I gotta go. It was like very soon after she died. And so it always brought me peace.
Yeah, same.
And then, but what's interesting is that Jack doesn't come very often to me in dreams. And I've come to the conclusion, and it probably will shift and change, but it's really hard for me when he shows up in the dreams because of that longing.
Yeah.
And so with him, and he does show up in different ways in my dreams that I know it's him, but it's not like those like, oh, I'm going to hug you and I know you're there kind of dreams that I've had in the past. And so for him, he was a huge personality. So I just, like you were saying about your mom, sometimes I just feel him next to me, or like I'll feel him like in the car sitting next to me, and I'll like literally reach out my hand and be like, I know you're there, Bubby, and like, or I'll smell him, or, so, quick little story. When I was pregnant with him, I would have these whale dreams. I never had whale dreams. I was never connected to a whale ever in my life, but I would have these whale dreams while I was pregnant with him. And then after I had him, they went away. I went about my life. And when he was about 3, he would deep dive into specific subjects. Like Elmo was the first one from Sesame Street, and then dinosaurs, and then whales. And then when the whales came about, I went, oh, whoa, wait a second. I used to have these dreams when I was pregnant with him. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, and then, he went on, then it was Minecraft and Legos and, stuff like that. And then after he died, I started to have whale dreams again. Whales show up for me everywhere. Like, and I'm talking about like, I'm making bacon. I look down and the bacon's like a shape of a whale, like shit like that. Like that it's become this really kind of awesome symbol that anybody who knows me in, professionally or obviously personally, know that when they see a whale in their life, they're like, oh, there's Jack's with me. Yeah. And it's a really great, I don't know, it's just really great and a beautiful way to connect. And, and I think one of the things when Jack died, it was a big wake up, because it's like you said, like you never expect anything like this to happen. I never, ever expected this to happen in my life. And when it did happen, it was, like, it was a big wake up of how do I live my life? Am I living it to this is again, a couple of years out of the grief process, but am I living to my fullest, most authentic capacity of why I'm here? And yeah, I always wanted to combine psychology and spirituality from like when I decided to get my undergrad in psych, but I didn't know how to combine them until I found hypnotherapy, which is a beautiful combination of it. But since he died, there's this weird fearlessness. I'm like, my worst fear happened. Absolute worst. That I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna move forward, being like, yeah, you want to, like I said earlier, if somebody doesn't believe that they chose their parents and all the things, I'm not for them, right? And I'm like, I choose to lead with a spiritual mission. And if you want to heal and you want to turn your wounds into wisdom, I'm gonna open you with open arms, because the whole concept of the work that I do, and just as humans, it's like we're just clogged with shit, with trauma, with negative beliefs, negative behaviors, faulty programming from families and society and all the things, that it's like we want to have a spiritual connection, but we can't get there through all of this. Like, it's like a clogged drain.
Through the noise, so much noise, because life can be so hard, so hard. And I don't know about you, but juggling so much. I'll speak for myself, with kids and work, and my son has autism, and trying to work through like all the services he needs, and my daughter's on the gymnastics team, and constant, right? Like schlepping all the kids everywhere all the time. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot to keep up with, and I think there's this like meme circling right now on whatever Instagram, and it's like a man's voice going, like, you don't have to like do all the things. Just like stop. You don't have to do everything. And then the woman claps back. Have you seen this one?
You're gonna have to share.
Then who is going to do it? Like,
exactly.
It's me. It's the mom. I have to. Right. And like, I laugh a little because it resonates. I also want to say, like, my husband does a shit ton too. But
so is mine. And it's also like a lot of stuff does fall on us. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't know if anybody's Harry Potter fans, but we're a huge Harry Potter house. And I'm like, okay, I'm not Dobby the house elf. Like, I'm like, I'm not here to pick up every thing or do every little thing.
I tell my kids I'm not your servant, but sometimes I fall into being that, and I have to watch. That's a boundary for myself that I am getting more and more watchful of, because I don't want to do that to myself. I don't want to model that, especially for my daughter, right? And I want them to be capable. They're perfectly capable. But anyway, this is to say, it's hard to quiet the noise and really sit with what's under the noise in order to reach my highest self and expand upon my life in meaningful ways that bring me a sense of calm and joy and meaning. And, this podcast was born out of the desire to do more of that. Right.
And you can't do all the things that you want to do if you don't go sit in your cave.
Yeah.
And people don't want to do it. They're like, I don't want to go into that dark space and clear out all my shit. And like,
how many poets are in there?
Well, but here's the deal, people. Like, the only way through is through.
Yeah.
And so like getting back to like being like all clogged up, it's like when you start to put yourself first and invest in yourself and go, okay, I need to heal my shit. Yeah. Once you start to clear out all of that crap, then your higher self or the divine or the universe or God or whatever you call it, it's like, they're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I could finally get through to her, because you cleared out all her shit. And then you have this channel to receive from the highest parts of you.
Yeah.
And that's where the creativity comes in.
Yeah. It's a lot about, in your work, you talk a lot about that it's difficult for, especially women, and right, obviously there's exceptions to the rule on both sides, with both men and women, but especially like women, it's hard for them to receive when they are existing in a state of going and trying to please. It's much harder to receive.
Yeah. I mean, I think even if you're not in the go, I think as women, we are the caregivers of humanity. Like, we're the ones that like have the ovaries and get pregnant and have babies and all that. Like, it's just part of us. But then we're conditioned through society, experiences, like what have you, to continue to people please and overgive, right? And we're great at giving. I mean, really. But we're really, and again, exceptions to the rule, but it's really hard for us to receive.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the byproducts that I had to again, going back to the lessons and why did this happen for me instead of why did this happen to me? When Jack died, the biggest lesson, well, one was I was always pretty good with boundaries, but one was boundaries. I was just like, nope, can't deal with anybody. But the second one, which I think was even bigger, was learning how to receive, because of the influx of love and support that I got from all over the world. I mean, like I said, like food showing up, flowers, people just helping, just people just showing up and helping and wanting to give. And I had a really hard time receiving all of it. And I was just like, that's really, I mean, again, a little farther out, from being shattered on the floor. But I was like, wow, I didn't realize how hard it was for me to receive love.
How are you now with receiving love?
I'm a lot better at it. It's still, it's still uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie, right? Like even when, I mean, it's just the little things, like when you're going around like life and somebody's like, oh, I like your skirt. You're like, oh, I'm like, oh, great, thanks. I got it on sale. Like I'm just,
you have to diminish the compliment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I'm a bargain hunter. I'm from New York. I worked in the fashion industry before I even went into this field. So I'm like, I don't pay full price for anything, but like all of those little things that we like do or say like in our everyday vernacular could be really diminishing if you're not aware of it. Like I had this experience where I was like leaning over to go get some yogurt at the supermarket. And instead of saying, excuse me, I said, sorry. And I was like, wait a second, what am I being sorry for?
I tell this story to a lot of my clients and a lot of my female friends. At the Women's March in DC, I went with my oldest childhood friend, who was a sister from another mister and mother. And the entire day, right, there were so many people there, and obviously lots of women, and it was packed, and accidentally people would bump into each other or literally step on the other person's foot by accident. And the entire day, it was women apologizing. It was, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So sorry. And I looked at my best friend and I was like,
God, especially there.
Like here we are at the Women's March, constantly apologizing for even minorly inconveniencing someone.
Yep.
And I think we're really like taught as women to make ourselves as small as possible, right? And God forbid we should accept a compliment. So I think part of the work is also just like, in addition to receiving, like learning how to take up space without apologizing.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I mean, first of all, what a juxtaposition. I mean, like you must have heard sorry all over the place. Like it was like, I mean, holy, oh my God. So, but it's interesting because I had this conversation with a client of mine, and it was about like learning how to take up space, not being small, all this stuff that we're talking about. And it's how if you are taking up space and showing up and using your voice and being your authentic self, that people are like, well, look at her. She's full of herself.
Yeah.
Right. And when we started to kind of dissect that statement, we're like, fuck yeah, we should be full of ourselves. Like, and it's like, I am full of myself. And how awesome is that? And like, just even shifting the energy, the vibe of how you say it.
I love that.
It's like, yeah, like why can't we be full of ourselves?
Yes. I love that.
Let's take that back a little bit and not be scared to shine, because like we all came in as a specific soul that like shine, let your soul shine, like clear away all the crap and like let your soul shine through, because you're not even with identical twins or like, they're all different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, let that authenticity, like who you're born to be, let that come through.
So beautiful. And your girls, they're identical?
They're actually not. They're
Okay.
fraternal, but they look like people throughout their lives have always thought, yeah.
Got it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
apparently if you have like a thick line in between the two, like, during the sonograms, it's fraternal. And if it's a really thin line, it's the other one identical. So,
But they could pass as identical. Yeah.
yeah.
So that, right, you're probably very attuned, knowing the type of person that you are, to helping each one of those girls shine as individuals and not just like project all of those ideas about what twins are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just so screwed up, by the way.
Well, it's so funny because when they were little, and like when they were little, I mean, when they were like, now they're 14, they have their own style. Like there's no, like you could totally tell them apart. But when they were little, I mean, even then I wasn't dressing apart. I was like, I'm not doing that. But anyway, they would, like, they're preschool teachers, they're kindergarten teachers. Like they would be like, how do I tell them apart?
Wild. Yeah.
And my answer was, get to know them.
Yeah.
I said, because they are totally different.
Yeah.
I said, the minute you get to know their personalities, you're going to know the difference. You might not be able to tell from behind, but you're going to be able to tell the minute you start talking to them. And then they'd be like, oh my God, they're totally different. I'm like, that's because they're two different human beings.
Yeah, right. It's like such
Shocker.
Such like duh advice. Okay. Well,
Why duh and aha? I'm like, when you have those aha moments, they're also very close to the duh. Like, I feel like they're two sides of the coin.
Of course, right? Yeah. I want to go back for a second in terms of like the kind of like typical audience that you draw from, like the people who are attracted to you, who want to work with you, and the types of clients who you really love working with, who you connect so easily with. You talk a lot about working with empaths, and can you say more about the like kind of like universal struggles or themes that empaths struggle with, and how, like, the kinds of things that you work on with them?
God, I feel like this is a whole nother show. There's so much. Well, first of all, I am an empath. And like, for those who don't know what an empath is, because it's funny, it's a little bit of a buzzword now. But an empath is a deep feeler. You're highly sensitive. You are, you feel. There are different, I could go into the whole thing, but like there are different types of empaths also. But for the most part, we feel what other people are feeling. There are some empaths that are like medical or physical empaths that are like, if you had a stomach ache, I would be feeling the stomach ache. Or if you had a headache, I'd be feeling the headache. And then there are like animal empaths and earth empaths. And, and I'm an emotional feeling empath, which, when you look back on it, you're like, oh, this totally makes sense of why you chose this field, right? But it's essentially, you're a highly sensitive person. So you're not only feeling what other people feeling and connecting with them on a really deep level, you're sensitive to sound, to smells, to touch. Like, I don't know. I always need to be in comfortable clothes. Like, cannot. I'm like, put me in something.
What I'm wearing literally I'm wearing and sweatpants. I just put on to look professional when I spoke to you.
I know. I mean, well, I'm in like exercise clothes, but I'm like my like sports bra. I'm like, this has got to come off and like after this,
like your version of professional,
pretty much. But that, I was like, COVID was like a dream. I was like, just in terms of the comfort, and we also, because we're so sensitive and because we're picking up on other people's energies and vibes and feelings, we also need a lot of alone time in order to recharge our batteries, quite honestly. Because what happens is, if you're not aware, one, that you're an empath, or you're aware that you're an empath and you don't know kind of how to work with it, a lot of merging happens, and a lot of like, where do I end and you begin happens. And so there's a strong correlation between empaths and codependency. And also empaths and addictions, because they're trying to numb the feelings, whether it's through food or through whatever, drugs, alcohol, you name it, relationships, so what's this is going to get all sciencey, and I really kind of love it because it backs it up, and I hate saying woo woo because I think it diminishes being a spiritual person.
Yeah.
But it has become a buzzword, and so, but what it is like, everybody has a mirror neuron system that's in their brain that helps you connect and have empathy with other people. And there is tons of research out there that empaths have a hyperactive mirror neuron system. And so instead of having like 10 fingers, we have like 1,000 fingers, like energetically, like out there.
Yeah.
And like, fun fact, sociopaths have an underactive emotional mirror neuron system.
Yeah.
So but we are about 20% of the population. And it is such a gift to be an empath, because we're the healers of the planet. We're the caregivers of the planet. We're the ones that are connecting and helping and sharing and healing. And it could be a hell of a curse if you're not aware of being one, or you're just taking on everybody's energy and you're just drained, and it's about learning, like, okay, who are your people, who energetically lifts you up, who are your energy vampires or dementors, like what types of relationships, what are the best relationships for you, which aren't, and how to really learn how to be your whole self without being like, oh, okay, well, I'm talking about like when I was in high school, I was like, oh, well, he's a football player, so I'm going to be a cheerleader. Or, the next one was a deadhead, and then I was a deadhead. I mean, they're all aspects of me now.
I know you're
still a deadhead.
Deadhead.
Can't wait. 2 more weeks. But it's like, what happens is, if you're not aware that you're one, you're going to start merging with other people. And then you're like, who am I?
Yeah.
So boundaries are really important.
Yeah.
Alone time is really important. I call it soul care. It's like, how are you going to go into your cave and tend to yourself?
Yeah.
So that because people pleasing runs rampant with empaths also. But it's just like, the thing is, as an empath, we want to please people. We want to give to people. But it's like, how can you give what's best of you instead of what's left of you?
Yeah.
It's like, I want to help you be a better caregiver by first taking care of yourself so that you could better help other people. It's like,
hey, to like, especially the mothers you work with, and could be women too, who are just, don't have to be a mother, but I see so many moms who are just exhausted and burnt out for a whole variety of reasons, some of which are the ones we spoke about earlier, just the burden that we bear and managing it all. And for those that are empaths, even more so. So what kind of things do you really hone in on and like really stress with those women to help them nourish themselves more? Like, what does that mean for them to do that?
Well, I mean, and I was, one of those women. I had 3 kids under 2. My life was fucking nuts. I was just, it's like babies hanging off of me.
Yeah.
And I remember, early on, then once they were able to get out of their crib and like walk to my room, it was just like, the minute I would hit the floor, I was like the short order cook. I had like, they were barking demands at me, like, because they're like little Neanderthals when they're little, and so and I just was like, I'm like not being a good mom because I'm running on empty and I can't even enjoy being a mom because I'm so exhausted and burnt out. And so for me, I was like, as painful as this is, I have to get up before my kids and at least have a cup of coffee so I could like start my day in quiet, and it was painful. But then I was like, oh, this is what I have to do. I need to create some sacred time for myself and fill my own cup up so that I can give in a better, freer, less stressed out.
Same. That cup of coffee before anyone wakes up, and then a couple times a week going for my run before anyone else is up, outside if possible, right? Feel the wind on my face, smell the air, like admire the magnolia trees, thank them.
Right. It's all sensory stuff, right? And it's like, and here, it's like what they say, like put the oxygen mask on you first before your children in the plane.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. It's not selfish.
Yeah.
It's a necessity, and even more so for all of us empaths out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure that I have asked you all of the questions that I have been so eagerly awaiting to ask. Okay, in winding down.
I thought you were going to be like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, we've like touched on all the things that I had written down that I wanted to ask you. What's your favorite part or your favorite thing about the work that you do? And what do some of your future plans entail in your work? If we can all have a little sneak peek, if you'll let us.
That's kind of a hard question because there's so many aspects of what I do that I love. Like one, I love just connecting with my clients. I love being able to hold space for them in a really sacred way so that they can do some extremely powerful and vulnerable work. And I love being their guide through whatever their experiences are that need healing. I absolutely love it. I know this is why I'm here as a human, is to provide this type of work. And sneak peeks, I'm holding a retreat in September 21st to the 24th, and I'm so sad you can't come.
I know. I'm smiling and frowning at the same time because I'm so excited for you, and I'm imagining myself there, and I happen to be attending another retreat that very same weekend. And
in the same corner of the world too. Like,
yes,
right by me. Yes. So I'm in Seattle, and the retreat is 2 hours outside of Seattle, but it's Journey Back to Your Soul. So there's going to be meditation and yoga and teachings on your soul's journey. And I've got 2 powerful hypno journeys to take people on. And one is going into the cave and finding out a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And then the other
would
one
it be
is,
if there was an actual cave at the place? Maybe one day you'll do one in a cave somewhere.
oh my God, I would kind of love that.
Yeah. Anyway.
I know, but it's, and then I have another one where it's, and it's funny because I just reread them yesterday because I channeled all of them. And I was like, where did I put them? And then I was like, oh, right, they're in my journal because I was in a meditation. And then all of a sudden, all this information started to come through. And I was like writing with my eyes closed. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, okay, I think I know what that says. But I was just like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. And so there are 2 channeled sessions. And then, Leavenworth is like this sweet little like Bavarian village in the mountains of Washington that is now like one of like the top family friendly places to go to in the country. But anyway, so I have that going on in September, and then next year I'm going to develop a program for therapists and coaches and healers to teach them how I do hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
So I could kind of help the healers heal, and so that they could heal others. And so we could, like, quite honestly, shift the trajectory of our planet. Like our whole planet needs healing. So
I will share with the listeners, I have had the privilege of doing hypnotherapy session with Nadia recently. I'm an EMDR practitioner, and I am not trained as a hypnotherapist yet, but I am very, very curious because it was in one session. It was just it was such a cool mix of so many of the things that I already use as a therapist, that I already believe in as just like a person in the world. And I was able to access all of it so readily. And you just have such a way of guiding, guiding me through it. I'm very much looking forward to doing another one soon with you. And if someone does want to work with you, how do they know the difference between, right? Because you still practice as a psychotherapist, but you do all this work also as a spiritual life coach. And so how do people differentiate? Like if they call you up, do they need to know in advance, like which category they would put themselves in? Yeah.
I do that for you. And essentially, I mean, just, yeah. Well, I mean, and I think, as a therapist and a coach, like, people again hear these words, but then they're like, what is the difference? Aside from, extensive masters and extensive licensure and all that kind of stuff. But essentially, I always do a consult call with people first. And if I have both hats on at the same time. And so if I see that there is a clinical mental health diagnosis, you go down the therapy track. And if you are, healthy and you have some life stuff that you're going through, or just, life stuff, and I think therapy has been kind of a catch-all. Like there are tons of people who don't have mental health diagnoses that are going to therapy, which is great. However, it's also, don't get me started on the soapbox of just just creating illnesses in people and diagnoses and insurance and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But if you don't have a mental health diagnosis, then you're going down the spiritual life coaching track.
Yeah.
With me.
Yes.
And that's pretty, just in general for your listeners, if you, that's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there mental health?
Well, that's so not. Because I have, I think all therapists can probably relate to the statement that so many of us have like a good handful or two of clients who don't really have a clinical diagnosis, right? But who we have to put something down because it's a medicalized system, right? So we all put like adjustment disorder with anxiety or whatever it is, because maybe they have like a little, little tidbit of anxiety.
Yep.
And a lot of these people will come in saying the same thing, which is like, I don't really have a lot going on, or I feel a little like self-indulgent coming to therapy because I don't really feel like I'm struggling, but I just like want to explore some stuff, right? Like, I don't want to have to diagnose that, but I am very adept at helping people to explore. Yeah, so that for you would be a coaching client versus
Right.
psychotherapy client. Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's just like whether it's therapy or whether it's coaching, is if you're here and you're showing up and you want to like look at your life and look at it as a tool of self-growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people want to work with you, what is your preferred means of them reaching out to you and getting in touch? Should they email you? And yeah.
Yeah, go to my website which is Nadia Ahrens Coaching, and I'm guessing you're gonna have the spelling
The
in
show
your
notes. Yeah.
notes. Okay,
Yep.
good.
Yep.
And then there is there's like a link on there where you could just set up a 30-minute call with me,
Yep.
and then we're good to go. And there's also a little quiz that's, if you're an empath, you could take a little quiz. And I also have a guided self-hypnosis meditation, which teaches you all about boundaries. And it's a really awesome guided imagery experience. So you could get one of those too.
Nadia, you're awesome. I cannot thank you enough for being here today. And I just want to tell the listeners, you guys, Nadia is one of those people. And we only just met. We've never met in person. We only met virtually like in the past couple months, maybe not even.
Yeah, like a month and a half, maybe.
Like immediately, she's just one of those people that you will feel instantly at ease with and connected to. And she's so fun. And she clearly knows her stuff, but yet like doesn't take herself like overly seriously. She's just human and real and beautiful. And this has been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh my God, this was so fun. Thank you, Jana. I love being here.
If you're interested in learning more about Nadia, you can reach out to her at Nadia, that's Nadia, at NadiaAhrensCoaching.com. Again, that will be linked in our show notes. Thanks so much for listening. If you have enjoyed the show and want to learn more, you can follow me at www.sheilluminated.com or email me with comments and show ideas at jana@sheilluminated.com. If you're interested in working with me as a coaching client, contact me at jana@janafuchscoaching.com. And if this episode meant something to you, please consider supporting the show by taking less than 1 minute to rate and review the show. It makes all the difference in the world to help spread the word, and it makes it accessible to wider audiences everywhere. You can also take a screenshot of it and share it with a friend or on your socials. Tag me, Jana Fuchs Coaching. And as always, may you walk through the rest of your day feeling just a bit more brightly illuminated. Until next time.